All right, so very good evening, everyone. Okay, so my dear NASO Explorers, this is Dhruv Mac from Navars Edutech, and I welcome you all to this amazing NASO PowerUp session. Now, last time, if you remember, we had studied about the moon, particularly focusing on the phases. And if you remember, we also did a nice activity at the end, that is making a lunar calendar, using which you could find out which date of the year shows you which phase of the moon. But today, are you curious to dive into the depths of a celestial neighbor? Will we ever be able to go to the moon and set up a colony there? How will the future on the moon actually look like? As we journey through the past, we will uncover the mysteries of the moon and will be also answering a major question. What does the future on the moon actually look like? Now, talking about the moon, ISRO, that is Indian Space Research Organization, has so far launched 3 missions to study the moon. That is Chandrayaan-4, Chandrayaan-2, and Chandrayaan-3. And each of this mission has given us a very significant and major amount of data. Each of them have, achieved major milestones in the scientific community. For example, Chandrayaan-1 mission detected water in the form of ice on the lunar south pole. Chandrayaan-2 mission gives us the highest resolution image of the moon that has ever been till date. I'm talking about Chandrayaan-3. I'm pretty sure you all know. We have all witnessed history take place right in front of our eyes when Chandrayaan-3 actually landed at the South Pole. Great, right? But now the question is ISRO going to stop there only? Not at all. Because now Chandrayaan-4 will also be launched. And even as we progress ahead, even Chandrayaan-5, 6, 7 missions will also be taking place. So to know more about these Chandrayaan missions and what will be actually happening in the future, we have our today's eminent speaker, Mr. Kshitij Mitra. Kshitij has done his MSc in Einstein's General Theory of Relativity from University of Mumbai. He has conducted several astronomical programs across the country. His education is frequently in engaging with the public through lectures, interviews, and outreach programs. Now, before I hand over the mic to Mr. Kshitij, I'd like to request all of you to stay tuned till the very end because we have a small surprise for you. All right? With this, I hand over the stage to Mr. Kshitij. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dhruv, for enlightening us on this amazing topic that we are going to study today. So today's topic is something that most of the people don't talk about a lot because we do have had successful missions in the past. Let us talk, let it be Chandrayaan, it will be Mangalyaan, or any mission, even Aditya L1. These were the successful missions that ISRO has carried about. But in this series, Chandrayaan missions have been the most important one because they have done remarkable progress in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, in terms of discoveries. So today's topic is mostly revolving around Chandrayaan, the history of Chandrayaan, as well as what the future on the moon holds for ISRO or humans in general. So let us begin by asking a very simple question. What is the significance of Chandrayaan mission? Why are we actually investing millions or even billions of rupees to go and search about different things on the moon? So here comes a very important part that after humans have always been curious, they have been curious about everything. We have gone to the depth of the ocean till the highest mountain. And we as humans just don't want to stop exploring because our curiosity doesn't let us stop. And that is why people are venturing into areas which involve space. Now, most of you might know that Neil Armstrong became the first human to land on the moon in 1969. After a few years, after a few of such missions of people landing on the surface of the moon, suddenly the race to the moon stopped. For almost more than 30 years, people just forgot about the moon. They thought that moon is something that is barren, dead desert, and life could not thrive on such a place. But now, since it is the need of the hour to realize how important moon is to us, we can actually launch missions to other planets and beyond by the moon, because moon has very less gravity. It has absolutely negligible atmosphere, which helps us to save a lot of money on building rockets, putting fuel into them, and whatever cost that we incur here on Earth is almost negligible to what we will incur on the moon. And that is why people are trying to again race towards the moon. Now, last year, in the year 2023, along with Chandrayaan-3, which made headlines throughout the world by marking India as the fourth country to ever touch down on the surface of the moon, to ever perform a soft landing on the surface of the moon, Luna 25, which was a Russian aircraft, spacecraft, was also racing against Chandrayaan-3. But unfortunately, they were not as fortunate as us, and hence we were successful, whereas Luna 25 crashed on the surface of the moon. So these are what things are going now, and what is the significance of Chandrayaan mission. Now, our journey of Chandrayaan mission begins with Chandrayaan-1 when it was launched in 2008. Chandrayaan-1 mission was an orbiter mission, as well as it had a special thing. Now, it did one of the most important discoveries in the whole world. That is, it discovered water inside the craters of the moon. Now, Dhruv, do you have any idea on how they discovered water on the surface of the moon?
That's a nice question. Let's pass this question to our viewers. Let's see what do they have in mind.
So, any answers?
Yes, we are getting answers now. That is, we discovered water in the form of ice. Okay. Someone said it has crashed.
Yes, absolutely.
Something crashed.
So Chandrayaan-1 itself did not crash on the surface of the moon. It carried a special instrument which was called as the Moon Impact Probe. That Moon Impact Probe detached from Chandrayaan-1 orbiter, and it crashed near the south pole of the moon, which confirmed the presence of water. Now, there are a few craters on the south pole of the moon that are very deep, and in them what sunlight never shines. So there is a very high chance that the water inside those craters has remained like that for billions of years since the formation of the moon, and that could actually hide the mysteries of the past of our solar system. So this moon impact probe confirmed the presence of water in the craters that never see sunlight on the south pole of the moon. After this discovery, India, or perhaps the whole world, waited for more than a decade for our next mission, which was Chandrayaan-2. Now, Chandrayaan-2 was launched on a GSLV Mark 3 rocket, which is India's most powerful rocket. And it is also sometimes called as, Dhruv, do you know what it is sometimes called as?
I can see a picture of Bahubali.
Exactly. It is also also called as Bahubali because Bahubali was also very powerful. And that is why this rocket is sometimes referred to as Bahubali rocket of India. Now, after its launch, the instead of carrying just an orbiter, it carried one special thing with it. It carried a lander because India now wanted to step up their game. So ISRO decided, let us now do a soft landing on the surface of the moon and show the world what India is capable of. But unfortunately, during the first attempt, it failed miserably. It did successfully enter the lunar orbit, and the orbiter is still in working condition. That's a good news. But the lander, unfortunately, during the last phase of descent, crashed on the surface of the moon due to technical difficulties. The altimeter, which shows the altitude from the ground above, did not work as planned and it crashed on September 2019. But what do you think? This is how India is going to just give up on this dream to ever touch the surface of the moon, to ever soft land? No. The scientists, with their grit and determination, did not stop at all. They just wanted this that if USA, Russia, China can do it, then we can also do it. So, our ISRO scientists, with their day and night of hard work, testing and failing again and again, finally came up with Chandrayaan-3 mission. This mission was a successor to Chandrayaan-2 mission, and it was more or less similar to Chandrayaan-2 mission. It also carried a lander inside which there was a rover, which is called as Pragyan, and the lander is named as Vikram after the father of the Indian space program, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. So it carried an orbiter, but instead of it looks like an orbiter, doesn't it? But it is actually a propulsion module that can make the lander go to the desired orbit. After it reached the orbit, as you can see on the screen, the propulsion module separates from the lander. The boosters fire on the lander and slow it down until the final descent where it touches down on the surface of the moon, marking a moment in history which was on 23rd August 2023. So India became the fourth country, as I already said, in the world to touch on the moon, but the first country to ever touch the south polar region of the moon. So that was one of most remarkable feat that no everybody is interested in the equator, everybody is interested in other parts of the moon that have features, but nobody is interested in the part of the moon that contains water, which is one of the most important resources that we can harness from the moon. And yes, after landing, the ramp of the Vikram lander opened and Pragyan rover started exploring the lunar surface. A rover is equally important because it explores the lunar surface rather than just being at one place. So that is how rover actually discovered different materials, different composition that are present on the surface of the moon. Now, I have one secret to tell you guys. I just want that secret to be between us and just make sure not to tell that secret to anyone. Promise. So, I actually, with the help of my team, stole the Vikram lander, and now I'm going to show it to you guys for first time ever. So here I present to you the Vikram lander. You can see the Vikram lander on screen, right? Now, if you see, there is a screen on top of the Vikram lander. So if I focus on that screen on the Vikram lander, I am actually able to see different readings. Okay, the reading of pressure, temperature, humidity, and even the composition of gas, which is the atmospheric composition of the moon. Now, maybe it is not clearly visible in this video, but there are actually different sensors that are present. So the first sensor that you can see on top, which is on the left hand side, is the pressure sensor that measures the atmospheric pressure. Then you have the temperature sensor, which is going to measure how hot the moon gets during lunar day and how cold it gets at night, freezing cold. Then there is one more sensor which is important, which is a gas sensor. Now, this gas sensor can tell us about what is the composition of atmosphere on the moon. Methane, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen. What are the different gases that are present on the surface of the moon? And finally, we have a sensor that tells us at what height from the ground the lander is. So maybe if by chance the lander lands on top of the crater, we can understand how high the lander is or what is the depth of that particular crater. Now we will try to focus once again on the screen.
Kshitij, I think you're muted.
So
Please.
now here we can see the temperature, which is 30.01 degrees Celsius. So this is the temperature of the room that I am sitting in. Similarly, if you send this on to the moon, it will measure the temperature of the moon. Now, the next thing is the amount of gas, which gas it is measuring and how much parts per million that gas is present in the atmosphere. So this lander measures methane gas, as you can see, which is 288 parts per million. It can also measure pressure in millibar. So here, since we are on Earth, the pressure is around 943 millibar, which is 1 atmosphere. You can also see the distance of the lander from the ground, which is around 11.8 or 9 centimeters, which is around 12 centimeter. Now, one thing that I want you to know is that if the lander goes higher up, so let us say I pick up my lander and move it up. So you can see that the distance changes with increase in altitude. So now you can see the distance is around 30 centimeters. But when I move it down, the distance has now come back to 12 centimeters. So this is how you can actually measure if the lander is standing on some crater, you can measure the depth of the crater as well. So I was just kidding. I did not steal the lander from anywhere. It is just a replica of Chandrayaan-3 lander. Okay, so let us now come back to our discussion. So, Dhruv, now since we have understood about Chandrayaan-3 and the lander, we also have to see where it actually landed on the moon. So the landing site with latitude and longitude is already given. It did not, of course, actually land exactly at the south pole of the moon. But yeah, it was below the line that demarks the upper part of the moon with the south pole. So we actually touched down in the south polar region, but not exactly on the south pole. Now, since we have discussed about the history of Chandrayaan mission, Dhruv, I want you to ask our audience what is next? What do you think is going to be the next step that ISRO or India or even maybe the world is going to take to make to make research on the moon accessible to humans?
All right, Kshitij, we pass this question to our dear participants. So, what do you all think is next? Please write down your answers in the comments. Okay, I got one answer. It's to explore water. Suryayan, Gaganyaan will explore the North Pole. Okay.
Okay, that's a good answer to explore the North Pole. Anything
Kshitij,
else?
Kshitij, yes, we have one more answer that's stating make moon a habitable place, make it accessible, etc. Explore about human settlements.
Okay, so that's a great answer. Establishing a future moon colony.
Yes, indeed. We
So,
will see what components are available for human resources. Over to you, Kshitij.
so that's some really great ideas that you people have given to me. Out of which we are going to discuss about a few ideas. Now, I was hoping for an answer, but nobody got that idea, or maybe somebody might have understood it, that we can actually explore the far side of the moon. That is a part of the moon that never faces us. You always have to keep in mind about the far side of the moon. It is really very important. The far side of the moon is the side of the moon that mostly remains a mystery because we don't talk about it much, and that's not our fault because in media mostly people talk about the part of the moon that are visible to us. The part of the moon that are completely out of sight are never talked about. Now, the dark side of the moon, as you can see on the screen, is filled with a lot more craters compared to the front side of the moon. The front side of the moon that we see on a daily basis looks kind of darkish. It doesn't have more craters because the flow of lava on the front side of the moon was somehow more than that what happened in the back side of the moon. So you won't see many dark black patches on the far side of the moon. Now, talking about far side of the moon, this year, that is this month itself, 15 days ago, on June 1st, Chinese National Space Agency or CNSA launched and successfully landed Chang'e 6 mission on the far side of the moon. Now, there is one very special thing about this mission. So, audience, can you guess for what this mission was launched?
Kshitij, we are already getting the answers for this question, and they are stating that to bring back samples for studying, bring back samples, bringing samples. Again, I am getting a lot of the same answers. There is one more which I can see, that is to explore about this. Yeah, about Changi 6. They're mentioning about Changi 6, which is already lifted off from the surface of the backside of the moon.
Yes,
returning samples.
that is absolutely correct. Chang'e 6 landed on the dark side of the moon to actually study the samples from the dark side or the far side of the moon. Now, people have already been to the moon and they have collected a lot of samples from near the equator. And also they have collected sample as Chang'e 6 from the far side of the moon. But nobody has ever analyzed a sample in a lab from the south polar region of the moon. So later on that topic, now people are also talking about what else can we do on the surface of the moon in future. And I got a few answers that we will also be establishing a moon colony. Now, if you recall what I started this session with, it started with a talk about launching of rockets from the surface of the moon itself, right? So, launching rockets from the surface of the moon is cheaper. We can use the resources that are present on the moon itself. Moon doesn't have a lot of gravity. Its atmosphere is pretty much non-existent. So we can actually launch rockets from the surface of the moon. That we discussed. And it can act like a gateway so that we can go beyond the moon, maybe Venus, Mars, and even it can make interstellar travel possible in far future. And that is why curiosity that helps human to explore more and more drives us to go and find new things on unknown places. And that is why establishing a moon colony becomes extremely important. Now, moon colony is not a very easy task. Okay, we can't just go over there, build a house with huge doors and windows and let the wind blow our hair. These kind of things cannot be done. We can't randomly go for a walk on the surface of the moon like we do here on Earth, because humans evolved on the surface of the Earth and they have been for lakhs of years. They understood the climate, the atmosphere, the soil composition, a lot of things that we already know about the Earth might be very different on the surface of the moon. Even talking about the day and night cycle on the surface of the moon is drastically different as compared to what we experience here on Earth. There is no such thing as weather on the surface of the moon. Of course, we can always talk about space weather, but weather changes that we see here on Earth are not present on the moon. So it is a pretty daunting task to actually go and live on the moon. Even though astronauts have been on the surface of the moon, to be precise, 12 people have walked the surface of the moon, still the idea of the moon colony remains a dream. So now I want to ask you all, what do you think, or maybe Dhruv, you can ask our audience that what do they think will be the challenges that we might face in terms of establishing a moon colony?
All right, participants, that's the question for you all. The question is, let me repeat what Kshitij said. He asked that what are the challenges we can face in order to establish a colony on the moon? Waiting for your answers eagerly. And all right, we already have a lot of answers that are coming in. So that is okay. We have got no atmosphere. There's lack of oxygen, scarcity of water to get electricity, lack of gravity. There will be no air.
Okay.
There's lack of oxygen. Again, scarcity of water. All components are not available. We don't know whether things are available or not. Lack of food, water.
Yeah, there are some great ideas that I'm getting. So imagine that we are in the Stone Age. Okay, humans have started evolving. There are three very important things that humans require in order to survive. Okay, we need resources for our body, resources to protect our body, and resources to drive our daily lives. Out of which, the first one that we are going to talk about is energy. Now, people will argue that we can easily harness energy on the moon. There is no problem at all. We have been sending so many satellites in space. We have landed on Mars. There are a few rovers on Mars that are still working. Space is not an issue for us. But if we talk about long term, then we have to consider that living on moon is a huge problem. Moon has 14 days day cycle and 14 days night cycle. So during the day, we can take the help of solar panels. Keep in mind that during the day, the temperatures on the surface of the moon can reach 250 degrees Celsius, which is extremely high temperature. It can evaporate things in an instant. So solar panels could be used during the day. On the other hand, the lunar night is also 14-day long. So a fortnight where the temperature can drop below negative 120 degrees Celsius, which could even freeze carbon dioxide. And if you remember, Chandrayaan-3 was a 14-day long mission. That mission only lasted one lunar day. And after the 14-day lunar night, it did not work because even though we can harness energy from the solar panel, we cannot use the same batteries to store energy that we use here on Earth. Those batteries will not be able to survive such freezing temperatures. One more thing, let us say we build houses and we somehow harness energy. Distribution of energy is also very important. It took nearly a century for us since we discovered electricity and to build all the power grids. We take electricity for granted, right? But we only realize how important is electricity after it is gone, especially in summer season when in night there is no electricity, we realize the importance of electricity. So distribution of electricity on moon is also a major problem because if we randomly build towers and distribute electricity like we do here on Earth, it can actually interfere with ions that are present in the atmosphere, a very thin layer of atmosphere around the moon and cause power failures that could add to the cost, of course. The second thing is shelter. Now, we already talked about how shelter is very important and very different, excuse me, from how we build houses on the surface of the earth. On moon, we have to be always prepared for extremely high and low temperatures as well as the radiation from the sun. There is no ozone layer to protect us from harmful UV radiation. So if we don't take care of that, then the risk of cancer might rise for people living in on the surface of the moon. Along with that, we also never think about the magnetosphere, which is like this invisible magnetic field around the earth that protects us from harmful solar charged particles, also called as solar flares. That protection is also not there on the surface of the moon. Plus, we sometimes see shooting stars, right, which are meteorites that enter the Earth's atmosphere. These meteorites are also burning up in our atmosphere. But since moon doesn't have an atmosphere, they will come and hit us. So we need temperature protection, UV protection, solar wind protection, as well as meteorite protection. Our shelter should be strong enough. So maybe in future we can have an idea that we might build inside the moon itself and underground basically, and you just cannot go around and have a walk on the surface of the moon because dust is a problem. It will not just give you sore throat or sneezing for a day or two, it could be deadly. So that is also an issue that we have to deal with. Now, after shelter is taken care of, we need some food to survive, right? Now, I did not talk about water. Do you know why I did not talk about water that much? Can anybody guess the answer? Dhruv, can you read out the comments, please?
Yes, it is. So, my dear participants, why do you think that Kshitish didn't mention much about water? Come on, think it over. We found ice, water in the craters because there is water already. There is water in the moon.
Yes,
Two more
exactly.
answers. And 1 minute, we have one answer which is stating that water is made up of H2O. And if we have water, then about oxygen also. It's going to be problematic.
So,
What is present in the moon? All right,
thank,
up to you.
thank you so much, Dhruv. And we got some amazing answers. Like people can actually think. That's crazy. So, that's true. Water is already present, and it is all about harnessing the resources of the moon itself. So, for growing food, we need water that we already have on the moon. So, why to carry extra luggage? If you go to Kashmir, for example, and let us say your airplane luggage is exceeding 15 kilogram, and you don't have a jacket because it is very cold in Kashmir. So what are you going to do? Simply you go to Kashmir and buy it rather than carrying so much luggage. So if it is available over there, if the resources are available at that place, so why to carry so much luggage and increase the cost? It will cost a lot of money. The airline will also going charge you a lot of money. So instead of taking things, use and harness those resources. From water, we can grow plants. But of course, plants has to be grown in a nutrient-rich soil. You cannot randomly grow a plant on a soil that is exposed to outer space, which has no nutrients. Very important thing that plants need is nitrogen. Without nitrogen, they cannot grow. And that is why we need a nutrient-rich soil. We already have water. We can create oxygen for breathing and hydrogen for rocket fuel. So H2O can be electrochemically broken down into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen can be used for breathing, which in turns produce carbon dioxide that plants will use to produce more oxygen for a human colony. And this hydrogen can actually be used to fuel our rockets, as well as the oxygen. Some of the oxygen can also be put in the rocket to make a hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. Maybe we don't need to carry any extra fuel on the moon. We can make the fuel on the moon itself. The moon can actually act like a fuel station. If we want to go to Mars, we don't have to carry that much fuel. We just have to carry fuel enough to go to the moon, and then we can refuel and be on our way right towards Mars. Of course. So these are the things that can be done on the surface of the moon. But before knowing all these things, which is, of course, a possibility, not denying that fact, we need to know what the soil on the South Pole is made up of. Because South Pole is where most of the water is concentrated on the surface of the moon. So there comes Chandrayaan-4 mission. Now, what do you think will be the special feature? We went into the orbit on the moon. We landed on the moon. We traversed on the moon with the help of a rover. What's next? What do you think is going to be the next step? What will Chandrayaan-4 include?
Over to you, participants. Please answer. What do you all think will be there in Chandrayaan-4 mission? Okay, bringing humans. It will be succeeding. Land on the far side of the moon. Explore moon. Bringing soil of the moon to the earth. Alrighty. Invention of living necessities. Alright. So we are getting a lot of answers. And now, I think it's time that I show you all as to what the moon actually looks like. So now our eminent speaker, that is Chitish, is now currently making some preparations for some activity that he's going to show you all. And until then, I would like to actually show you how the moon looks like, the front and the back side of the moon. So, would you like to see or have a tour of the entire moon? Yes, participants? Okay, so we are getting some yes answers. So let's just quickly have a tour of the moon until Kshitij is ready. Okay, so I hope you all can see the screen, right? So let's just have a quick tour of the moon. That is because now our eminent speaker, that is Kshitij, he mentioned, all right, Kshitij mentioned that we have landed at the southern pole of the moon. Also, he mentioned about Chandrayaan-6 mission, which has been to the far side of the moon. So now you all actually should have, a view of how the moon looks like on the whole. So for that, I'll just display before you all this particular information. So now this is the moon that you see in front of you, and now we'll have a quick and brief tour of the entire mission. So okay, I think it should be a bit slowed down. So that's how the back side of the moon looks like. It's so insanely and heavily cratered. But now, if you noticed carefully, at night, you can only see the black patches, right? You can see that there's a rabbit on the moon. It's in the shape of a rabbit. But look at the back side or the far side of the moon. It is heavily cratered. And the best part is, to add more fun to this entire moon mysteries, I will be also showing you all the polar regions of the moon. So, are you all ready to see the north and the south pole of the moon, my dear participants? Yes, would you like to see the north and south pole? Okay, I've started getting some answers. Yes, sure, and everything. Okay, so let's stop this and let's directly have a look of the northern pole. Of course, I will be showing you all the southern pole of the moon, but wait. Let the let it develop. Let the entire excitement develop for that. Let us see the north pole of the moon. And here it is. the North Pole of the Moon. Let's slightly zoom in. And that's how it looks like. Insanely cratered. And now, wait. This is just the northern pole. Let's come to the South Pole now. So let's zoom out. Let our spacecraft take off from the northern pole. And let's go down to the South Pole. And here is the South Pole, even more heavily cratered as compared to the North Pole. And that's how the South Pole looks like. So, if you remember, Kshitij mentioned that we have got water in the form of ice at the lunar South Pole. And that is because if you notice carefully, you are having these shadowed regions. If you can see carefully, there are a lot of shadows at in the craters. So that means that these craters are even deep. They are so deep that the sunlight doesn't actually reach their bases. That means that even if there is water and there is no sunlight, that means the temperature will be negative. And if the temperature is negative, that means your water will be frozen. And that is why, my dear friends, the Chandrayaan-1 mission detected water in the form of ice at the lunar South Pole. All right, so now Kshitij has told me that he's ready, so I'll stop my screen share and over to you, Mr. Kshitij.
Thank you so much, Dhruv, for explaining about the Moon Atlas. So now here we have a replica of Chandrayaan-4 mission. So of course, Chandrayaan-4 mission is also going to carry a lander module, which is towards the left side, and an orbital module, which is on the right side. Now, as the Chandrayaan-3 is orbiting in space, in around the moon, the orbiter separates and moves away from the lander. And as you can see, there are boosters under this lander that fire and slow down, and finally they land in the south polar region of the moon. And of course, since we are sending a lander, we will perhaps send a rover as well. So a rover is going to come out of the lander and explore the lunar terrain. Finally, there is one important thing that this lander carry, perhaps a robotic arm. Now, before the robotic arm operates, the top part of the lander is going to open up. And then this robotic arm is going to open, which is of course attached onto the lander, grab some samples from the moon, and then put it inside the lander, which has a special accent module. Now, this door on top closes smoothly. Okay. When the ascent module is ready, this door will open up again. And then finally, out of the lander, the ascent module will come up and eject itself into the moon's orbit. Okay, so this is how it is going to work. Now we will also see maybe we can actually see the parachute in motion. So, sir, are you ready to show the parachute?
Yes, Shitish, I'm ready. Just give me a second.
Okay, so now we will see the parachute deployment. And then I will ask you a very important question. So stay tuned.
So, can you see it?
No, there is a background, sir. You can go to
Oh,
video settings and remove the background, please.
one second. Just give me a second then.
Oh my God. Now that job is over. Your job is over. Thank you so much. So now, as you can
Actually,
see, once the parachute enters into once the sorry the ascent module enters into the atmosphere with the help of a parachute, it will slowly and steadily land. Now here we can either have a landing on land, or else we can have a landing in water. So depending on where we want to land, it can either land on land or water. Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful demonstration of the parachute. Now, finally, I have the parachute with me. So here I have the parachute in my hand, and this is the probe. Now I can open this bottom part and remove the moon sample. Finally, I have received my moon sample, and using this moon sample, I can test it for hardness, chemical composition, acid test, and maybe a lot of other things that can help us to determine whether or not a moon colony is possible in the future. We are going to the moon, so we must know a lot about it. So we finally have a sample from the South Pole, and we can test it for various things. Now, there is one more thing, that if you go to, there is one more activity that we will be doing today, which is a 3D mooncraft. As you can see, I have two papers on my hand, and you can actually make a 3D mooncraft with it. Okay, so just give me 1 second. I will be explaining how this works. So you have these stencils. Now, this is a very thin paper. You can take a color printout of these stencils. Since it is very thin, what you can do is you can stick it on a chart paper. So it will be a little thicker and it can hold shape. At the same time, you can also stick it on a cover of your old book. So books have a thicker cover. So in that way, you can stick it. Now, what you need to do is this part forms the moon. This part is some information about Chandrayaan-3 and an actual image taken by Pragyan rover. And here you have the lander. So there are instructions which are given on this. Of course, I will also be playing a video on how to make it. And then, of course, you need to cut it, as you can see. And then you need to cut the moon around these lines. But make sure to attach a chart paper or some kind of a paper which is thicker. Otherwise, it will not maintain its shape. So after cutting everything, you should be able to assemble it. So I'm just going to share a quick video so that you have an idea of how to assemble it. Dhruv, can you give me permission for sharing my video?
Yes, Kshitij, you're already a host. Uh, okay, wait. Yes, you're the host now.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So here is the video. Okay. So basically, you have to stick it on a thick sheet of paper, and then you have to remove the stencils. And then you have to start cutting it, as you can see. And the instructions are written over there. So you can go through the instructions. And of course, you need to cut it like side by side. So once you are done cutting one side of the moon, as you can see how it has been cut, both the sides should be almost symmetrical. Then you take the other part of the moon and cut the remaining parts, the lander, the small rectangular strip at the bottom, and the two circles. Okay. So one important thing is this strip should be like a ring. So make sure to add a small slit at one end. You can see a white line on one end. There you will be adding a slit. So you can see I'm adding a slit on one end. Okay. And then finally, after adding a slit, I'm just going to make a ring out of this rectangular piece. Okay. And that is how your ring should look like. And then finally cutting the other pieces as well. So finally, we will cut it as shown in the video. So as you can see, we will cut the other part also similar to the first part. Okay, so we have both the parts and our strip. Now we will finally cut out the lander along the borders. So don't worry, each and every instruction is already mentioned on the sheet itself. So you don't need to do a lot of work. So we have all the parts cut out. Now we will start folding. So you can see how to fold the circular parts. Okay, like that. Both the parts should be folded similarly. And then you can see there is a white line on one part of the moon in the center. There you need a slit. So you add a slit in the center like so. And finally, after adding the slit, you can attach the lander on top of it like so. Okay, now you take the any one part which has a slit and we are going to stick it on the information that has of course that has an information of Chandrayaan-3, and the A, there will be one A written that you will stick on the top where the heading is, which is Chandrayaan-3. And using glue one by one, we will stick the moon parts onto the information parts as shown in the video. Okay. And after it is done, it should look like a small cup which is inverted. And same to same we will do for the other one as well. Okay. After sticking both, we are just going to keep both on top of each other. And with the help of a small tape, just one single tape, we are going to stick it on the other side so that we can open it just like a cute box. And then like this, we can open it. Okay, just one. So you have information and an image on the one side, and then close the ring to form the base. Put the lander on top and put the 3D moon model on the base. So finally, you have the 3D moon model, which is complete. And this is the model that I made. So you can make your own 3D moon model and you can have the information about Chandrayaan-3 and the lander. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dhruv.
All right, Kshitij, thank you so much. That was a really fabulous and a fantastic session. And I'm telling you, the time when you actually demonstrated the lunar landing and the sample return, it was really great. And I'm pretty sure our participants who are here, they must have gained a lot of knowledge throughout this session, and they were very excited also. I could actually see it in the comments. Secondly, I'm sure that you all want to see this PDF also for making this activity. Also, you all might have a lot of questions in your mind about how, why, when, and a lot of other questions. And lastly, what we have to do is the thing is that you can get all this information, that is the PDF for this activity, and you can also post your questions on the ISRC website. Okay, so we have this ISRC website wherein you can register and you can post your photos for these activities. You can ask your questions about our webinars that are taking place, the NASO PowerUps, and you can also write your reviews about the sessions. So let me demonstrate exactly how you can make an account and join this website. It's pretty simple. And this is actually a place where not only us, not only students like you all, but there are many other scientists as well who are joining. There are scientists and there are highly knowledgeable people who answer your questions on this particular website. So it's pretty simple. Please stay tuned for next 2 minutes and let me quickly explain you how you can make a website. How you can make your account on this website. Okay, so just a minute and here we go. Okay, looks like, give me a minute, there is, all right. So I have the host access. Now, okay, so how to go about is first you go to Google and you search for ISRC Navars. Okay, ISRC Navars. That's what you will search. After that, what happens is you will get two options, that is login and registration. What you have to do is you have to click on the register, ISRC registrations. Now, when the site opens up, you will get these following options. So put up your first name, your last name, and your preferred email ID on which you'd like to get the updates or notifications. After that, what you will do is you will have to select a password. Now, your password should be a strong one. That is, it should include lowercase, one uppercase, at least one lowercase, one uppercase, one number, and one special character. Like you can say A, B, C, one capital D, @ 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is an example. Okay, that password can be something of that sort. Okay, write your password, then re-enter your password again, okay, to get confirmation. Now, for those of y'all who have the astronomy labs in their school, what you can say is you can say yes. Those of y'all who don't have the astronomy lab in your school, opt for no and just click register. So the moment you click on register, you get access, okay, and then you get an email stating that you are ready to log in. Then all you have to do is just log in. And when you enter inside this particular website, what you do is so that's how your website looks like. Okay, so this is where we had posted about our today's session. Okay, today's PowerUp session. So you can ask your questions over here in the comment section. And over that, we have a latest post wherein we have this 3D mooncraft model that Kshitij just now showed us. Okay, the one where you were sticking and you were making this mooncraft model. Okay, so that's it from our end, my dear participants. So I hope you all had a great time and you all enjoyed. I hope you all got to learn something new and got to understand some new concepts and some new facts about our upcoming ISRO missions, especially on the lunar front. All right. So I hope that take care of yourselves and stay tuned, and let's meet once again next week for the next NASO Power Up session. Until then, this is Dhruv Nayak signing off. Goodbye.